So welcome to the fourth in the series of education palliative care webinars. And today we're focusing on compassionate communication in a humanitarian or fragile setting. We're delighted to have three speakers join us and an extra panelist as well. And we'll be introducing you to them in just a moment. There'll be time for listening to our speakers and then time for panel discussion. Today is a special webinar because we are also showcasing and or joining the worldwide movement for World Hospice and Palliative Care Day. And this year that subject is compassionate communities. So right at the beginning, as we're welcoming people, and I can see colleagues from all over the world, we've just had colleagues join from Ghana, that's fantastic, from India, many colleagues. So you're all very welcome. We're going to tell you ways to get involved with PalChase and ways in which you can contribute your ideas. But today you can use chat. So please use that. Please feel free to comment and to ask questions. But I think we'll start with a tribute to World Hospice and Palliative Care Day and the theme of compassionate communities from Dr. Tedros Adhanom WHO. Thank you.
On World Hospice and Palliative Care Day, WHO recognized the compassionate communities providing palliative care and the critical needs for these services. Palliative care relieves pain for the seriously ill and improves quality of life for patients and their families. But globally, only 14% of patients who need palliative care can access it. This exposes families to unnecessary suffering and social isolation. WHO calls on all countries to expand access to palliative care as part of their journey towards universal health coverage. That means stronger policies, better access to essential medicines, better training for health workers, and more research so that people everywhere can get the compassionate care they need.
So thank you. That's a good start, but it also shows the way in which palliative care and compassionate communities is reaching around the world. We're very grateful to Dr. Tedros for many ways in which he's supported the development of palliative care. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and Erin's putting them up there. But I think today there are many, many conflicts and humanitarian disasters in many parts of the world. And many of us will know people involved or will be moved because of the humanitarian crisis. We think of Afghanistan, Morocco, Turkey at different stages of recovery or experience from earthquakes. We think of many places affected by floods. We remember Syria, and we remember Tigray, and we remember Ukraine, and so many places which have known conflict for some time. And we also remember the people of Israel and Gaza, and the really severe humanitarian crisis right now in Gaza. So I'm going to invite everybody just to take a moment, just to reflect on what is happening in our world and to hold that space. If you want to say a prayer, you can, but just to hold that space for just a moment or two for all those in humanitarian crises and settings right now. Thank you so much. And we're continuing to hold that space as we discuss. And we're absolutely delighted to have, now as facilitator, I have a challenge to differentiate these names properly, because we have three excellent speakers who have some similarity in names. I've been in Arabic countries a lot, and Anna means I in Arabic. So we've got a real challenge here if you're an Arabic speaker. But absolutely delighted to have Dr. Anto, Dr. Andre Bello, and Dr. Anna Clemenson. I'm going to introduce them briefly here, and then if they want to, at the start of their talks, tell us something more about themselves, they're very welcome to do that. So Andre is going to go first. He's a general practitioner and is involved with a health volunteer organization known as SABA, which is particularly reaching out to remote places I think he's joining us today from Timor-Leste, and we're delighted to have him join from there, where palliative care is integrated into other forms of particularly primary health care and development. You're welcome, Andre. I think you've also been working closely with the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Society. We're also delighted to have Anne now. Dr. Anne To is not a stranger to our Palchase webinars and our networks, and we're delighted to have you here. A home hospice physician based in Singapore, working with Star Pals, but also involved with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Fellowship Programme. And we know she's also spoken to us about the circle of support that was developed for colleagues in Ukraine, or with colleagues in Ukraine. Anna Clemenson, Anna and I have most recently been working together in Gaza. It's delightful to have you here, Anna. You're a palliative care consultant in Ireland, a background in also in family medicine, as well as a specialist in palliative care in the middle of your PhD. And you've got experience in many international settings, including Russia, Uganda, Ethiopia. And twice this year, we were together teaching in Gaza. So all of you are extremely welcome. We also will have a panelist, but I'll introduce her a little bit later. So may I invite our first speaker, which is Dr. Andre Bello, to speak to us. He's going to be helping us think through compassionate communication for crisis situations. Thank you so much.
Hi, big love from Timor-Leste. Thank you very much for the good opportunity given to me to share my experience on compassionate communication in humanitarian crisis, based on my experience that I'm doing to my patients that live in very far away, in very remote areas around Timor-Leste. I am at this like this. I am at this. Okay, I am Andre Bello. I am currently working as a UN physician, and also founder and executive director of a community-based organizations NGO called SABE. It is healthcare. It means a healthcare for all, and also for family physicians and palliative care advocate and care fellow. And also, I'm a father of 2 children, husband and volunteer doctor to forgotten patients in remote areas. This is why that's why I always say myself that I'm a doctor, belong to the people, especially the community in remote area. If you see those picture here, while do activities, we go back, I have to cook for the other volunteers. And also here is this, we have a very simple place, where we gather our volunteers to do activities, and also pictures me, my wife, my son, and also my daughter. Okay, next slide. Okay, before I'm going to talk about the compassionate, my experience on compassionate communication in humanitarian crisis, I would like to let you know about Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste is a very tiny country, like it's located in Southeast Asian nations, occupied half of the island of Timor. This tiny country that is colonialized by Portuguese and followed by Indonesian for around more than 450 years. Okay, and we get like our independence in 2002. This Dili is like the capital of Timor-Leste. Even though we are a very tiny country, but we are very rich in history, languages, and culture. You know, we have about 36 dialects around Timor-Leste. It means one village have their own language. So it is rich, but it's sometimes a barrier for us. Okay, mostly people speak Tetun, Portuguese, English, Indonesian, and Spanish. Tetun is like this most like formal language that we use in the country as well. This tiny country has 1.3 million, where 75% of population they are living in mountains or in remote areas. As you know, Timor-Leste, like this, we have like this petroleum, but 48.3% population still living in poverty line, and unemployment here is still high. It's about 5.1%. You see the picture. We have this very beautiful like this beach, the status of Chris of the King, everything. Okay, yeah, and all. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, here I would like this to share with you the Timor-Leste long road to freedoms. Okay, here this, Timor-Leste is, Timor-Leste journey to independence has been turbulent and traumatic. And so now you know why, because it's this country that's colonialized by Portuguese and also by Indonesians. It's for total more, that's for Portuguese, I mean, it's 450 years, and then continue with the Indonesians for 20 years, for 20 years of like this violent Indonesian military occupations. These 20 years bring a lot of like this, bring many layers of like this, social, psychosocial impact to this life, its daily life of the community up to right now. This have left the world newest nation badly scared and traumatized. Why? Because this during 20 years of occupation, more than 200,000 Timor-Leste population were killed. Thousands or more died of hunger, malnutrition, and diseases. And up to now, still 150,000 like people still displaced or missing. If you see the picture, if we hear like these people up to now still looking their family that's like now living, I mean, missing up to now. And one thing that I would like to share from this slide, when in a conflict or this war situations, women, mother, and children are mostly affected by that crisis. So that's why living like during that situation, I really understand what the situations, what the emotional effect that happen to women, children, and also the mothers in a country. So yeah, so it's really living in this double burdens of diseases, burden of life, and also we still bearing the conflicts, the emotional conflict that we have been living through for many years. Okay, so next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah. As a country of post-conflict, as a nation of post-conflict country, we're still struggling with many things, many living aspect that we still are fighting against. Okay, you see this many victims of war, conflict survivor are still living in injustice conditions. Here, like this men, like this, especially like this in case of sexuals and also this domestic violence cases. I mean, there's many children here, they don't know this about their fathers because they were during the occupation situations, they were raped and pregnant, and everything. And so many mothers and parents are still searching for children and other family members. Based on our experience, when we go to the outreach, some mothers, they're still waiting like it's their son until now. They still believe that their parents and also the children are still alive. Yeah, and this is the situation that we are facing. 80% of people are still living under poverty line, and 40% still remain illiterate. And this is quite high here. 68% are still living under feeling of stress, depressions, and PTSD. Yeah, and there's still no proper treatment on those psychological, psychosocial victims. Yeah, based on a survey, it takes 10 to 15 years as the post-conflict country regains their stability. But in reality, it is not. This is not the same as the survey. Timor-Leste has gained its 20 years of independence, but we're still struggling. Many people, many patients, many people still left behind. Many people still need to be looked after. Government system, health, education, social, economic faces many challenges. And currently, we are still facing those situations. So that's why I would like to say, okay, crisis, conflict, war it will not bring like this the good things. It only bring big disasters. So being a country that's already living the situations, I really aware, and I really encourage that people. There's a lot of things that we have to do after the war. It is many single things that we have to fight for. I'm talking about as my experience as a survivor of the war as well. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, since like living in like this minutes, like struggles and situations. So, and also like this greatest establishments and organizations. Those those situations bring me to this three levels to understand about three levels of compassionate communications here in my country, and based on my experience, the communications to a left behind person to our patients, it should consist of like these three levels. His family is very important because many patients, they are living with their families. Many people, they are not going to the hospital. So here, the communication with the family, heart to heart, this by action, it is very important. So here, like this, you see this, how we see the patients at home, how we inform the conditions to the family as well. The family has play a very important role. The family is not the important one, but family is everything. So that's why the family's compassion, the communication with the family is important. And also the community. As you know, in Timor-Leste, we are a very small country. Here, everyone knows everyone. So everything, communication, sometimes we also like this to engage the community, because there's many people also when they are living in very remote areas, sometimes the communities, because of their family as well. So create communication, good communication with the family, with the patient, but also with the community. Here we are like this. So this, how to deal with the community, because the community and the family, sometimes they are the first people that we are going to meet when we would like to do something in the community. Based on my experience, and we exist up to now because of the support of the community, because we have a very good communication. We have this with the community and family, and the government as well. Government, so like this, we advocacy for the government about the situation, but it should go through the this communication as well. Very good communication as well. Government sometimes they only focus on some things like this superficial level, but go deep to the community, go deep to the families. It should be like this. There is like this family and community should be important as well. Okay, as it is a country where after getting independence, like this, when we were like this, lead by the many agencies. Sometimes those of things like only programs level, but not in reality. Because of that, like this, we would like to create these organizations, how to communicate to the community, to the family, to the patients, what is the basic needs of the family, by not only talking, but by staying with them, by sitting with them, sometimes by eating and cooking with them. This is the way of communications. Communication is not only talk about, but communication is action. So this is what we do so far. Next slide, please. You see, like this family-based compassionate. Here, we all like this involve the family in make situations. Here, like the head of family, sometimes the leader of the village, sometimes you're also involved as well. If you see the picture here, it's mostly in remote area. The one who spend most of their time in the family is a mother. So in every situation, we should involve active like this, the mothers like this in the communications, because you know the volunteers is not always always stay with the family, stay with the community. So the mother and also the local community here, so it is very crucial. It is very important. I like this to communicate with the patients, also with the family as well. So here the communication should go this is based on family. So we consider as them as a one of our family, part of our community as well. If we consider them as a patients, not consider them as a family, not consider them as a community, and then it will be quite difficult because in Timor-Leste we have this many cultures, we have many languages, we have those barriers sometimes become a problem for us. So and then communications with the families, communications with the head of the villages and also the mother of people in the family is very important. So the communication here, as I mentioned, it is not only a part of like this, the way you speak to them, but the way you understand what they want for us, what they want for us to do to them. So living in the community, living in a very resource-setting area, every aspect that can bring the information, can bring the help to them, we have to scale it up. So that's why this program, this living with, this volunteer program is very successful. That is in remote area of Timor-Leste, especially to those patients that cannot come to the hospital, that difficult for them to come to the health centers. Okay, next slide. Okay, yes, and sometimes like this, what we know, the number of doctors and health workers in Timor is very limited. Okay, or most of them are still employed, and the government still has no capacity to recruit all those to go to remote areas. So that's why many remote areas in Timor-Leste are still abandoned. People are living for a very long time because of its war consequences, and currently they are still they are living very far away, and also still untouched by this development of the country. And then we have like this to we have to secure what is the best way, what is the best communication that we can share with them. Okay, so here this community-based compassionate communication, it means like this, we can engage the other people, we can engage the head of the leader that can transform what we want, what we can to the community. Sometimes the community, since they are living in very suffer situation for a very long time, sometimes they don't want to share with us. Sometimes they just keep quiet. Sometimes they only communicate their problem with us to their family, to the community. So that's why the communication should be established between this community, the family, and also other people that live in surrounding. And yeah, so this situation that we are like this always practice every day in our life, especially in the community in remote areas. Okay, next slide. Okay, I just would like this to show a little bit. Okay, in Timor-Leste, it is about the system, health system here. This, even though we have this hospitals, health centers, and also this health posts, but because of the lack of the government's capacity to recruit those staff, and not many doctors would like to stay in remote areas, so most of them those are like this health posts and also health community health centers. Sometimes it is like this still closed. So that's why we engage the volunteers to stay with the community to provide medical service. So to teach them how to live peacefully, how to live with the problem that they have, but without interrupting their well-being. So this is like this we do, but it is not easy, as we said, because that's sending the volunteers to stay in a very remote area where there is no internet connections, where there is no road, where there is no clean water. It is quite very difficult. But the important things, the community that has been a long time waiting for the touch of love, for the touch of caring. Sometimes like this we have to resign to it, because as we know, we are always belong to the people. We are not belong to what we have. We are not belong to the degree that we have, what the importance of degree that we have, and then we cannot share those things to the others. So this is how I encourage, how I emphasize to our volunteers to be a good doctors in community where the community is still struggling for the basic healthcare, also other problems that they are living with. Okay, next. Okay, this is about my organization. The one thing is many people always, when talking about the health volunteer organizations here in Timor-Leste, if you would like to be a volunteer, it means that you are get nothing. Here, we know the situation very well. I have been traveling around Timor-Leste, so I know the situation. So that's why I established these organizations just to encourage other health professionals to work in remote areas, to provide medical services in remote areas. And it is not easy. You know, this
Andre?
how many, yeah.
Andre, this is a wonderful presentation. Can I ask you to wrap up now? Just because we're running out of time for our next speaker. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So currently we already mobilized around 500 health professional volunteers to help the community in remote areas. And currently we serve around 100 remote areas around Timor-Leste. Yeah, we just to make sure everything is, to provide the medical care to our patients. And next, please. Okay, and also those patients that cannot be like this access to remote to this healthcare. So compassion like this mean like this, our presence become a drop of us. I mean, this become like this drop of, this spot of hope for the community that is still struggling for the basic life support. So here this we become like this what it is here. So here being this good communication like this, being a doctor, we should like this it's humility, that is humility, collaboration, responsiveness, integrity, and also this area. So being they are a doctor, but they have to they have to go with their own service. The work cannot go well if there is no collaboration between the members and also with the community and also with the government. And responsiveness here, this during the COVID-19 situations, many remote area they are most severely affected. So how we send the volunteers like this to provide a quick response to community and remote area. It is part of communications and also integrity. Integrity, this is how we still it's always do some things even though it's not seen by others. So we do some things not like to promote ourselves, but we do right things for those who still unseen by the development of the country. Yeah, so this is like the presentations about like this my experience in bringing it in developing compassionate care. So before I would like to read one of the poem. I'm going to read in Tetu and then will be English. Cultura mat memoria. Usi povi ida ne bella mate. Aksal mat historia. Usi povi ida ne bella mate. Rona dia. Moris mat liberdade. Usi povo ida ne bella mate. Independencia mat vontade. Usi povo ida ne bella mate. Rona dia. Justiça mat oferta. Usi povo ida ne bella mate. Luta pa descoberta. Usi povo ida ne bella mate. Rona dia. It is a poem from our heroes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that. I think we're just moving straight on to Anne, and our time is very tight now. So maybe we can just, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
But it was a beautiful talk.
Thank you. We'll try to keep within the time. Give me a minute to open my slides. All right. Okay. I will try to speed up a bit. So hopefully I can try to talk a little bit faster, but thank you. So the topic, I have adapted it a little bit to be about compassionate connection in humanitarian settings. Right. Okay, and the first slide I wanted to show to carry on from Dr. Andre's talk was Dr. Andre talked about compassionate communication at a systems level, at a meso level, a community level. And for my talk, I will focus more on the individual level if we use the socio-ecologic model to frame this. And when there is suffering and when there is loss and grief and trauma, the emotions of grief are experienced both not only by the individual, but very much by the community and families, and relationships are affected. And even at the governmental level, systems and policies and stakeholders, we can see from the story of Timor-Leste about how the entire country grieves. Okay, this is a very simple slide about the trauma response. Very often when there is loss and trauma happening, our entire being goes into a fight, flight, or freeze mode. However, for healing to happen on an emotional, psychological level, or even a relational community level, we have to somehow shift, not only stay in freeze or fight and flight zone, but find spaces where we can go into the green zone, into what the parasympathetic tone, whereby we can actually enjoy relationships and connection. And that can be really very challenging when individuals, communities, or entire countries encounter trauma. And the reason why I want to highlight this is because very often in a very highly traumatized situation, words often fail us. And the reason for that, I cannot turn the slide back. But the reason for that is because when we see in the previous slide, when we are in fight or flight mode or freeze mode, our cognition may not be functioning so well. It is quite normal for individuals to experience slowing down of the cognition, increasing forgetfulness. And so that's the reason why I decided to use the word connection rather than communication. Because when people are highly traumatized, words can fail us. Even when we have the right words to say, not always the words will register into the minds and hearts of those whom we are trying to be with and serve. So what do we do when words fail us? Okay, I want to show this picture because it is very symbolic for me when I first saw it of hope. And this is a real tree in Timor-Leste that Dr. Andre brought me to, which carries a lot of meaning for the country and the people. How can a tree not grow out of fertile ground, but manage to grow, survive, and thrive, put down roots, and the roots grow all the way down the rock into the ground, and still flourish and have leaves? So when words fail us, stories, symbols, archetypes that are familiar with our own narrative, our own cultures, can touch us and unite us. So from my understanding and from what Dr. Andre shared with me, this tree for the Timorese people brings them a lot of hope, to say that we can still be strong no matter the hardship, like the rock that the tree is growing on. We can still not only survive, we can continue to grow. Every culture has our own stories and symbols and archetypes that are unique to us. And it's very important not only to listen deeply to the words that are said, to what is not said, but also to the underlying fabric of the cultures that we live in. So this is a Chinese word. So I'm from Southeast Asia, like Dr. Andre. I'm from Singapore, where we have different races. So my race, ethnicity-wise, I'm Chinese. That's why my skin is a little bit yellow. Okay, so this is a Chinese word. And a Chinese word and communication actually is full of symbolism. And you can see it's very difficult to memorize and write all the words, but this is a word, a thing, it's a listen. It means listen. This word means listen. You listen with the ears, right? And only with the ears, the chief part of connection, communication is the ears must be king. We listen with our eyes, we listen with our entire attention, oneness of our being. We listen with our hearts, we listen with the completeness of our being, we listen to the completeness, the entirety of the story, what is said, what is not said, and the underlying subtext and narratives. And this is my mentor, Prof. Cynthia Goh, who role modeled for me, how can words or actions or even a posture become a connection, communication that is can be very little, but yet very powerful to transform the conversation. So our posture, our facial expression, how we slow down, the tonality of how we speak can bring certain gifts to the other person that we are speaking to. But what she said to me one time is, if you can give just for that 10 minutes, the entirety of your entire attention, of your entire being, to receive the story of the other person, that will be such a gift that can bring much comfort to the other individual. So listen. And this one I put here, okay, sorry. Okay, this is Singaporean saying, the Singaporean student here, this we say is in Singlish, we call it Singlish, Singaporean English. We are same but different. That is something that I have learned over the past year, that we may be across different continents, from different cultures, from different race. We may not even speak the same language, but yet we are same but different, right? And I've seen how relationships and friendships and deep connection can form in very simple ways when words fail us, when the cognitive mind is no longer functioning, and how very quickly, so there are these millennials, maybe we are millennials, so all the millennials like to take selfie, whether in Ukraine or in Timor, right? And regardless of race, language, or religion, just to borrow a phrase from my national pledge. Okay, so this is a diagram that I like to just mention when I speak about contexts that are very traumatized, that it is very important for us to care for the caregiver at the front line. And for us who are doing that work at the front line, how is our care for ourselves? How is attention for ourselves? What is the interior experience like for us? And have we managed to find spaces to ground ourselves? Are there supportive relationships? So Dr. Andre does a lot of mentoring to the younger doctors who are volunteering out in the field. But then there is that wider international community that have since then come alongside him, like Joan, like Liz, to provide an additional shoulder to cry on or somebody to lean back on, and practical help. So Andre was sharing with me that sometimes they even cook meals when they go into the village, into the rural areas, together with the mothers and the wives, you know. And so very practical help is very important. How can we ensure that there's no malnutrition? Do we have a farm? Is there fishing? Safe spaces to focus on being not only for ourselves, but with each other. And can we remember that we are not just our minds or our emotion, but our bodies are important too. And to ground ourselves in how we feel in our bodies so that we can continue serving, right? And that sense of togetherness and belonging, so that when there are times when we are burnt out or we've hit a wall and there's no solution, that we feel that we are not alone, no matter whether in the rural island of Arturo or in different places around the world, in Myanmar, in Cambodia, that we are not alone, but there are people around us. And that gives us a strength to carry on. So I've reached the end of my talk. Like I shared, a very short talk, but I thought I would end up with a poem, not that poem, but another one, just very quickly to read this as a closing before I pass the time on back to Moira. And I'll just read you the English version of this Timorese poem. Culture are the memories of a people who refuse to die. Action is the history of a people who refuse to die. Do you hear me? Do you hear me well? Life is the freedom of a people who refuse to die. Independence is the craving of a people who refuse to die. Do you hear me? Do you hear me well? Justice is the endowment of a people who refuse to die. Struggle is the finding of a people who refuse to die. Do you hear me? Do you hear me well? Thank you. Okay, Moira.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Anne. Thank you. That was very beautiful. We're running very behind time. Sorry, everyone, but they've been fantastic talks. So please, we'll try, and we may not have so much time for discussion. So please put your questions and thoughts in the chat, because we've got one more speaker to hear. But I think we may do more of the discussion in the chat. So please use that. We've had two fantastic talks, and now we want to hear from Anna. Anna, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me present. It's the first time I've joined your group. I'm very honoured to be with such a wide selection of people with so many skills and so many ideas. And I've been really inspired by both those talks to learn, and both about place initiatives and just about that connection. I think it's so important. I apologise for a lack of beautiful slides, and I have no poetry, but I shall be inspired next time to do something similar. Now, I'm going to talk about working with patients and families to identify goals of care. I want to, when I talk about this, I'll give examples from the Irish setting where I work and some examples from Gaza and other places I've set. But I guess what I'm talking about are principles, and we each have our own culture where we interact differently, where phrases are important to us. How we use our language is different in each place, and who is the most important in terms of who is appropriate to talk to, how we talk to people is very much linked to our own community and our own culture. So I guess when I present this discussion, I'm presenting a set of ideas that we will need to take to our own setting and perhaps take aspects that can work and adapt it to make in our own work in our own setting. So I'm going to talk about working with patients and families to identify care goals. I'm just going to see if I can make we may have to ask somebody else to do this because I cannot make this move for some reason. There we go. So I'm going to start talking about goals of care. So sorry, I'm missing a slide. I'm going to talk about what are goals of care, why are they important, when do we consider goals of care, how do we create realistic goals of care, and then I'm briefly going to show you a couple of tools and framework, and I'm going to try to do this in a very short amount of time because I know we're caught. So my presentation there. So what are goals of care? Well, goals of care, if you look at the dictionary, goals are about aims and purpose. And so when we're talking about goals of care, we're talking about the aims and the purpose of what we do. Well, if you're sitting listening wherever you are, you might think, well, why would I need to talk about this? Surely every piece of healthcare I give has an aim to make a patient better and a purpose to enhance their life. But actually, there's more to goals of care than just that. And it's the bit about collaboration that Andre talked about that we need to think about, and maybe utilising that connection that Anne talked about. So in our context, as we talk today, we're talking about meeting patients and people who have illnesses that are going to shorten their life. And we are coming as healthcare professionals because we know we need aims and goals of care. And we know that you matter, as Cicely Saunders says, to the last moment of your life. And we know that we will do all we can to help you die peacefully, but also to live well until you die. So I'm going to come as a healthcare professional with my physio skills, my nursing skills, my doctor skills, or whichever skill I bring, social work skills. I'm going to assess the patient. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to identify problems. And then I'm going to offer solutions with the goal of making the patient better, with the goal of helping them live well. But everything I've said here is really the context of the healthcare professional. the healthcare hero. I've not said much about the patient. And one of the challenges when healthcare is provided, I think, in any setting, is that it can be from the perspective of the doctor or the nurse or the other healthcare professional. The perspective or context of the patient may be very different. They've got different values. What's important to them may not be the same as what's important to me. They may they will have lived until they had their illness as a worker, probably, as a mother, as a father, as a carer. And these things are important to them. They might be someone who's known to be very strong and they value that. Or somebody who's very wise and able to talk, or somebody who's very social. So they have values. They live within a culture, as Andre said, and the culture is so important, and their role in that culture is important, but it may also affect what they want to do with the life they have left. They have beliefs about how life should live, beliefs about what it means to be somebody, beliefs about why things happen, and they will affect life going forward. They have experiences. They may have been a carer for someone they may have cared for someone who's ill, or experienced someone else being ill and know that they want to have something like that person experienced, or they definitely do not want to have that kind of experience. Their illness is going to be individual. Maybe they have a sarcoma that's affecting their leg. Maybe they have brain mets and they're a little bit confused. Perhaps they're incontinent. Each person will have their own challenges. And as Andre and Anne recognised, the family and those close to us are really important, not only in our role, but also in our influence as to what we want to do and how it be done. And then our needs are different. We've got social needs, psychological needs. You may have spiritual needs. Why has this happened to me? And so each person has an individual illness and an individual set of goals of care that are that are sort of occur because of all these different aspects. So I'm going to tell you about a patient because I met a patient just recently in which goals of care, my goals of care and his goals of care were interesting. They were similar, but quite different. So a gentleman came into us. He was 40 plus, but nowhere near 50. And he had an advanced metastatic cancer. He'd only been diagnosed with this very recently. And he'd gone from being somebody who was sporty, who was a father, who was the earner of life, to somebody who was less well in bed, not able to do a lot of things. He came into the hospital where I work because he needed symptom control. And when I first talked to him, his aims were to get better. His aim was to go home. His aim was to be a good father. And his aim was to sort out paperwork and the car, actually, which wasn't working. We treated with the antibiotics and we did a lot of things. But over 10 days, my patient became less well. And I realized as a physician, using all my clinical skills, that my patient was going to die and going to die within a few days. I recognized he wanted to be at home and with his family when he died because he told me that was a goal. So I thought I need to go into him and I need to chat. I need his wife to be there because she's very important. When he wants decisions, he always wants his wife there. And I need to talk about going home, about having no more antibiotics. And I need to talk about not coming into hospital again. But actually, his goals were a little bit different. His goals were that he wanted to write letters for his children for when they were older so they could know his wisdom. He wanted to record his wife his voice so that he could be heard in the future by his family. And he wanted to be as awake as possible because when he went home, he wanted to be the father. It was all about being a husband, being a father, and maintaining that role as long as possible, and even after he died. So it was really important to him that we acknowledged those goals and that we worked towards them. And actually, both of my goals contributed to his goals, but if I didn't ask him about his goals, I wouldn't really understand, and I wouldn't be able to make a plan of care that was really good and important. So by developing goals with the patient and with the patient's family, we can actually make the patient, we can develop goals together that work together, and they take into account the healthcare workers' goals, but more importantly, they take into account what matters to the patient. And what matters to us is so important. If we acknowledge that and if we work towards it, we saw that goals are about aims and purpose, about meaning. So by listening to our patient and recognizing what's important to him and why it's important, we can support hope and meaning. And then we can plan care that is realistic to their condition, but actually is really still hopeful. And that my gentlewoman was in Ireland, but similarly, I remember meeting a gentleman in Uganda who had bowel obstruction, and my aim was that his tummy was comfortable, and his aim was that he made up with some friends he'd fallen out with. So we made his tummy comfortable so that he could talk, and the social worker bought some small amount of internet and he was able to link with his friends. So it doesn't necessarily need to be complex stuff, but we really need to understand what the patient wants and work together with our goals. So as I said, the goals can be varied. We need to think about social goals. Does somebody is a birthday important? Is a marriage important? Psychologically, my patient wanted to be awake and not drowsy because he wanted to be a father. Some people don't want chemotherapy. Sometimes they're about treatment because they've seen what it does, and they actually just want a life where they're not suffering. Whereas others want chemotherapy because they value time. So there are lots of different needs that we need to be aware of. So what we're saying is that we have individual patients with individual goals and individual needs. When do we address these goals is one of the questions that my colleagues would ask me. And I think we need to be aware that goals change. When my patient arrived, my 40-year-old man, he had one set of goals. And when his illness changed, in the space of 10 days, his goals changed. So we need to review our goals regularly. So maybe at first point of contact, what does your patient want? What is their interests? If you're planning a change in their care, or when a change occurs in their health or their circumstances, maybe they're old and their wife has died while they're ill. Or perhaps if you've just not talked about it for a long time, if you are in a situation where you look after patients for a longer period of time. So we've talked about goals and we've talked about that they're individual, but how do we actually go about doing this? How do we go about sharing goals and making shared goals together? Well, as we've seen, it's mainly by listening to the patient and the family. We need to be really central and listening to them. We need to clarify, to really understand what they want. Not just what their goal is, but why they have that goal. Because sometimes what they want isn't possible. I have a patient at the moment who really wants to walk, but that may not be possible. But actually what she underlying wants to do is socialize. So perhaps I can, using a wheelchair, take her out. We can sit in a cafe and look at the people walking by, and we can satisfy her want and make life meaningful for her. So we need to clarify, reframe, and plan together. So there's some very common steps, and some of them you will know, and I want to keep this swift. So you need to prepare. You need to know the details of your person that you're going to talk to, and consider where you meet and who should be present. So for my patient, his wife was so important, but his children were too young. You need to explain why you're going to meet, and there can be some useful phrases that we can use, but you may find that you need to adapt phrases for your own culture and your own setting. So for example, you may say, can we meet later to discuss your health? Because I want to understand what is important to you, so we can make plans that suit you. So we're preparing the patient for this meeting, and we may need to reassure them that we're not breaking bad news, because when we hold meetings here, patients are often very fearful, as are their relatives. We need to, if we're going to talk about goals and aims, we need to make sure we're starting at the same foundation, that we're starting at the same place. Because when we get set off on a journey, we need to start in the same place. And here we also want to end up in a similar place. So we need to ask the patient about what their understanding of their illness is, what their understanding maybe of the future is. And that may be asking the patient or the family. And then we need to clarify and make sure we start at the same foundation. And then if we're really wanting to know about the goals of the patient, we need to ask what matters to the patient and why. We need to establish what is important for the patient and family, and establish why it's important. And again, there's some phrases that are useful. They're very common sense ones, and you can again adjust them for your own setting. But we know from evidence that is certainly in the UK that patients make goals, but they often don't tell us about them. And the reason they don't tell us about them is because we don't ask. And if we don't know what we are, we can't assist them. So can you tell me what is important? Do you have any plans? And then why? It's important to understand. But often we're inhibited about asking these questions because patients can ask for unrealistic things. I have a patient at the moment, I have two patients who want to walk when that isn't realistic at the moment. And what I need to do, therefore, is understand what it is they're wanting to do. We had a patient in Uganda once, he had a sarcoma, and he wanted to play football. When you dug into that, what he wanted to do was hang out with his friends. And so when he couldn't play football, we needed to look about, could we facilitate meeting and playing with friends? So we clarify goals and meanings. In Gaza recently, we met a patient, and when they were chatting to her, the team realized that her really important thing was that she wanted to cook. When they dug into the meaning, they found that was because she was a mother, and that is how she looked after her family. We need to look and see if these goals are realistic and possible. And one of the questions the team might ask is, do you think this is something you can do at the moment? So by considering goals, we're not only helping hope and helping people to do what matters to them, but we're helping them to adjust to their illness. So with this lady, she recognized she couldn't walk at the moment, she couldn't cook. So if she wasn't strong enough to cook, the team thought with her, and they said to her, have you any other ideas that you think might work better? Because it's really important that they are part of the process of planning what we do. And they decided to buy food, and they invited the children, and they shared a meal together, and it really brought joy to the family and to the patient. So we've seen with my patient that his goals change in the space of 10 days. So we need to keep reviewing our patient and adapting the goals, because things will change for them. Their family situation will change. Their families may become tired. They may be scared. Their mobility may change. So things will change. But by constantly being aware of our patient's goals and resetting our goals of care, we can help the patient adjust. And as we've seen, by doing this, we can sustain hope, support, and enable the patient to live by doing very simple things and using our medical skills in a way that they wish to. Finally, there are some tools that you can look at online, and they're in the reference from this slide. There's a REDMAP framework and a REMAP framework. And there are many other frameworks, but these can provide frameworks that you can look at and adapt. And they may help you have these kind of conversations with your patients. And they give you other phrases that I've not talked about that may be helpful to you in your own environment to talk to the patient and their family, or the appropriate people in your setting when setting goals for your patients. So that's my talk. Thank you so much for listening and for having me here.
And I thank you. And I think that is that beautifully brings together. We had that incredibly moving journey that you took us on, Andre, to Timor-Leste, and thank you for that, and helping us understand the context for communication. And now it's not just individual, but also a community, very importantly, and government. And you just helped us touch on some of the ways in which we respond to trauma, and we can engage in communication with people who've experienced quite significant trauma. Thank you for that. And Anna, you've given us really some really good tools that we can use to think about how we take a goal-setting discussion in. Now, we have a lot of questions, and we're joined by one more member of our team, Annalise. I think you're on the call with us, and you're a nurse working in Dadaab, one of the biggest refugee camps in the world, I think still, certainly a very big refugee camp in Kenya. And you're studying palliative care as well. So thank you for being here with your experience right on the ground as well. We have some great questions. In fact, we have a lot of questions. So let's see how we get on. We'll probably just have 5 minutes of questions today. And that means if you want more discussion, come back tomorrow when we'll be exploring it again. But I wonder if I could ask Annalise, first of all, just to give her a response to what she's been hearing as one of our panel members. Annalise, could you just respond to what you've been hearing, particularly around communication skills in crisis settings? Annalise. There you are. Yes, Annalise, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much to all. I want to appreciate the presenters of today. They have really talked a lot, sensible, educative, informative, and environment changing words that have come into my ears. I want to appreciate that what they have said is really true to the world of today, and especially when it comes to the humanitarian setting environments, like where I work. I must appreciate my organization, my employer, for all the good works they are doing to give at least a home from harm to our brothers and sisters, the beneficiaries. Communication is very much important to anybody at any situation, and especially when it comes in a compassionate way than when you are just told this and this is what is happening to you. Like most of our physicians, I must say that the information they give to our patients is just that of curative part. When you are diagnosed, you are just told you have this and it ends there. So you are given medicine for curative, but the patient goes back home, does not get well, comes back again, goes back, keeps piling medicine upon medicine, but does not understand the real situation of what is going on and cannot get anybody to explain better. What Anne has said about listening, clarifying, and reframing, and then planning together. It is sometimes so difficult for a place like where I am, because reaching these patients, our beneficiary keep relocating from place to place. Some come from their home of origin to the refugee camp, hoping that they will get something better, different from where they came, but they come and again, they don't get what they really want, and nobody is there to explain to them. Then the situation worsens, and then they go back, they move to another camp, they keep moving like this. And then it becomes so difficult for people to, at least communication becomes so difficult because you are communicating this time. When you go to visit in the home, you get the person, the patient or the beneficiary has relocated. Now you lose them again along the side. They come back when the situation has worsened. Now you are again defeated where to start from. So,
Thank you.
and then given also the resources which are very limited. Yes,
thank you, Annalise. Given our time, I think I might stop you there if that's okay, because I want to address some of the questions we have. We just have a few moments left. Now, we've had a lot of questions in our, particularly around why is compassionate care important, and what factors influence it. I think you've been touching on that, Annalise, and some of our other speakers as well. And a really crucial question that's come up here about the cultural aspects of truth telling. So why is compassionate communication important? What are the principles and factors that influence it? And then, you know, that particular aspect of communication, which is what do we mean by truth telling? I wonder if anyone would like to just give brief comments. We just have a few moments left on any of those topics. Andre or Anne, either of you, or Anna? Just put your hand up if you would like to make a comment.
I will respond to the topic on telling and collusion within my culture. Like Timor, Singapore is very, very family centric. There's specific roles within the family as to who are spoken to or not. I just had a conversation with a family today. The father was colluding to protect the son, elderly man, and the son also is colluding to protect the father and mother, and saying that I think my mother will break down. And I reflected back to him that Singapore has gone through Japanese war and your mother went through all that. So maybe she will not break down. So the collusion, so I think compassionate care is appreciating while there might be no straightforward answers to truth telling. Sometimes the collusion and the hiding of the truth has its intent in love. And in my culture, sometimes filial piety, you know, care for the family, for each other. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And thank you for reminding us we shouldn't go into these with any assumptions or any ideas of you know, what is bad and good, but we were listening. I love the way in which these conversations are being reframed by somebody called Catherine Mannix into tender conversations, which I think is a lovely word in English. Andre or Anna, do you want to come in and make any comments there as well?
Okay, I just would like to add more, right? This the factor that is
Thank you.
influence the compassionate communication. Okay, in Timor-Leste, this one of its big factor is the language barrier. As I informed, this many areas like this, one village to the other, we have a very different language, and this is one of the biggest like this barriers for us. That is to do communication with the patients. In this situation, where most of them we use this non-verbal communications to deal with the patients. Thank you.
Thank you. That's lovely. And I think that's beautiful because it's the heart language sometimes is very different from even the spoken language. There might be more than one, but you've told us something else, and that is the non-verbal and how important that is. And thank you so much for that. Anna, anything you would like to add to those questions about, you know, the priorities and values of compassionate communication?
No.
Anything you want to add?
I think there's been a lot covered in the thing. I think I've picked up also from both Andre and Anne's talk. I think it's so important the human part, just the being with someone, and I think that feeds into if you have the abilities to even meet somebody once and just hear their goals. In actually holding them in that space, that's important, and also maybe empowering them or their families or whichever people it is important to think about how their goals may be met, so that if you don't meet them again, they've been empowered. But I think I've learned such a lot from the talk, so thank you.
Yeah, lovely. So, I mean, I think there's so much more to talk about. I think Andre, Anne, Annalise, Anna, I think you've shown us that there's more to talk about later. This webinar is framed as a teaching session, but I think there's so much more to unpack and explore. And thank you, Andre, for really sharing at a very deep level the experience from Timor-Leste. Thank you. We have really appreciated that, learned from it, and would love to explore that further with you in the future. And we love your input, and thank you for just helping us again think about how we hold some of those spaces. And I think we'll specifically look at issues of trauma and maybe issues of what it means truth-telling in another webinar. Thank you for that. Anna, that was really, really helpful and well structured to help us understand maybe how we might go about it. And I see in the chat, there's been some links to other videos that are there to help us with communication skills, which is brilliant. Annalise, I'm so sorry there wasn't a lot of time to chat today. Please, I hope you're there tomorrow, and we'll pull you in a little bit more. But we have come to the end of our webinar, and we've had a really great interaction. There is a link here in the chat about how we can know about future webinars. This is the second last one of a teaching series, which is more focused on the basics of palliative care, but it is highlighting issues that are very particularly relevant to humanitarian setting. This word cloud in front of you was done by the network, by the Palchase network. They were invited to join a Mentimeter word cloud to say what they thought compassionate palliative care means. And I think we've heard many of these things today, and in that beautiful poem that was shared in 2 different languages from Andre and Anne, we've seen this. So thank you so much. We will have same speakers tomorrow. Some will be still live, some will be using their recorded talks. If any of you were thinking of recording and you'd love to be with us, even if it means losing some sleep, we'd love to have you, but we understand that it's not always possible given time zones. And I want to thank everyone who's been working behind the scenes, and please do join Palchase. Please do get information on these webinars coming up. I've counted at least 13 or 14 countries, I think, represented today. And so we globally recognize everyone that's here. And we thank you so much to everyone who is behind this webinar, as well as the ones in front. And we look forward to picking these issues up again tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Moira. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.